Hi everybody and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's on tap this Saturday on Out of the Gate. It's a Preakness Day edition of Out of the Gate, and we are presented by the Maryland Jockey Club. Daily Racing Form handicappers Matt Bernier, Mike Beer, and I will take a look, of course, at the Grade 1 Preakness Stakes. Always Dreaming continues his quest for the Triple Crown. We'll also look at some races on the Pimlico undercard, the Grade 3 Maryland Sprint, and the Grade 2 Dixie Stakes on the turf. Nicole Russo's pedigree pick focuses on the Preakness. Which horses have the bloodlines and the stamina to last that demanding mile and 3/16 distance? Craig Milkowski from Timeform US will join us with his Timeform US Spotlight, his Preakness Analysis, including the Timeform Pace Projector, and Jonathan Kinchin will give his take on the second jewel in racing's Triple Crown. We're getting ready to break out of the gate with our analysis of the Preakness. Kickoff Out of the Gate presented by the Maryland Jockey Club with our in-studio handicappers, Mike Beer, Matt Bernier, and we're going to take a look at the second jewel of racing's Triple Crown, the Grade 1 Preakness Stakes. Let's take a peek at this field. It's race number 13 at Old Hilltop. And remember, for expanded stakes previews, graded stakes action from Pimlico, from Woodbine, from Santa Anita. We cover every horse in great depth. Visit video.drf.com. Gentlemen, the story of this race, of course, is the Kentucky Derby winner, Always Dreaming, the number 4, John Velazquez, Todd Pletcher, 4-5, and of course, the horse to beat, Mike Beer.
Yeah, I think he really is the horse to beat. That was a nice step forward there in the Derby last time, wet track or not. And, you know, a track that wasn't helping closers too much, I didn't think, or not. I just think he may be the best 3-year-old in the country right now. It's funny, though, because out of a 20-horse Derby field, the shorter field this time, there's a chance that things get a little bit tougher for him as far as the way this race lays out.
And we're going to talk about the pace scenario a little bit later on. And of course, Timeform US's Craig Milkowski has the Preakness pace projector a little bit later on in his Timeform US Spotlight. But Matt, as we take a look at the Kentucky Derby and Always Dreaming, really relishing the wet surface at Churchill Downs, he ran hard every step of the way. He got a brilliant ride from John Velazquez. But Johnny V is going to have to be sharp yet again going into the first turn of the Preakness, because Classic Empire figures to be more forwardly placed, and Conquest Momoney could be on a dead scent from the outside.
You would imagine he's going to have to do something pretty similar to what we saw here, where he's going to have to use them early, establish some position, and then try to work out something going down the backside. I agree, it may be half the size of the field of the Kentucky Derby, but he's probably going to have to do something pretty darn close to it if he's going to secure the ideal spot in the Preakness.
Mike, let's talk about last year's 2-year-old champion, Classic Empire, of course, brilliant winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. It's been a start and stop campaign for Classic Empire. I think a lot of folks are going to take the argument that he is now making his third uninterrupted start of the form cycle. He is going to be fit and ready to go, and he had significant trouble in the Kentucky Derby. There are others that are going to say he's the underlay of the race, despite the fact that he won't be the favorite. What's your take?
It seems almost certain that most people are going to take the former position there. I'm going to take the latter position, and I guess we'll just see what happens with Classic Empire here. I understand that he had a tough trip in the Derby, and maybe the way that that race was run and the trouble he had to start gave him no chance to win. I'm going to take the position that he has to prove to me that he's taken a step forward as a 3-year-old. So far, I haven't seen it from him. I know there are excuses to be had. I want him to prove it on Saturday.
Matt, since day one with Classic Empire this year, you've been poring over the past performance lines and said, other than the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, where's the fast race? Where's the representative effort of a future Classic winner? Did you like his Derby? Do you think he still has work to do?
He still has work to do, but I can understand anyone that wants to give him all the sort of excuses for a race like the Derby, the wet track, getting sideswiped out of the gate, and then just kind of being in amongst horses. But it still leaves me wondering, are we going to see him get back to that 102 that he earned in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile? Because he's going to need something pretty darn close to that, I think, Saturday if he's going to win the Preakness. And to date, he just hasn't delivered with something like that.
Race flow, Always Dreaming, up close to the pace in the Kentucky Derby. Classic Empire, Mike, bumped a little bit coming out of the gate. Something tells me the Julian Leparoux breaking directly outside of the Kentucky Derby winner, he's not going to let that horse get too far away.
Yeah, that's what I thought would happen, too. And that's why I was sort of, hinting earlier on in the open there that, this a smaller field, but it might be a little bit tougher for Always Dreaming this time because he's going to have a quality horse, I think, going after him relatively early in this race, and maybe it'll make all the difference. I still think Always Dreaming is going to get through this thing, Dan, but I think you're going to find Classic Empire going right with him out of the gate and turning this thing into a horse race.
Matt, how does Conquest Momoney affect this race? Breaking from the far outside post with a good amount of early speed. Does Johnny V and Always Dreaming let him go? Does he engage this horse early? Does Conquest Momoney rate?
I think it depends how hard they send Conquest Momoney. Look, I think the only way he can win is by trying to wire this field. And I think if they go just guns blazing early on, Johnny V is going to say, go ahead, take it. We'll just take over this thing, turning for home. But that kind of goes back into this scenario talking about Always Dreaming, where maybe he has to work harder in the Preakness than he did in the Derby, because you're going to have to put away Conquest Momoney. You know Classic Empire is going to be there. And then you're going to have the wave of the horses that are pressing or coming from the back of the pack. So there's a real chance that on 2 weeks rest, Always Dreaming is going to have to work the hardest he's ever had to work in his life.
Remember, friends, that the Preakness is our formulator race of the day for Saturday. Head on over to the Race of the Day event page on drf.com. Download free formulator past performances and check out our expanded stakes preview, where we discuss every horse in the Preakness in great detail. For Out of the Gate, however, it is pick time. Matt, you're trying to deny Always Dreaming.
I just like the look of this horse, Cloud Computing. It seems like he's on the up and up. He's very lightly raced for Chad Brown. This is one of the few things Chad still has to sort of check off on his career list. That's getting one of these American classics. And you see him right here. This is in Gotham. I understand he doesn't really, he finished second in here, but keep in mind, he was the first one to make a move into a pretty hot pace. There was a big headwind down the backside that day, and J-Boy's Echo had all the best running, and he just sweeps by him. But I like that this was his second lifetime start, Cloud Computing. First time going 2 turns. Then he came back in the Wood Memorial. I don't think he was embarrassed. It wasn't a good effort, but if you believe that you needed to be forward in the wood, you needed to be inside, Cloud Computing was neither one of those. He broke a step slow. And I think there's a real scenario, whether it's just Conquest Momoney and Always Dreaming that go, or if you add Classic Empire to the mix, if they line up out front, I think Javier just sits in behind sort of the pocket trip. If those 3 knock heads, maybe he can make a move turn for home.
I agree with you about the potential for a very good trip in behind the pace, and he might have the most upside potential of any horse in the race. But Mike, you think that Todd's going to be on his way to New York with a Triple Crown contender?
Yeah, I'm going to give Always Dreaming the chance to get through this. I'll be honest, and I thought long and hard about taking a different stance and going with Guinevere, hoping the trip works out for him and he can make a late run. At least he's a little bit dirtied up. Ultimately, I'm going to side with Always Dreaming. I think he gets an okay trip in this race, and I just think he might be the best horse.
Like you, I am going to go with Always Dreaming. I think he can work out another good trip close to the pace without getting involved in too enervating a pace duel up front. And I'm hoping that maybe Multiplier plays the looking at Lee role of the Kentucky Derby and perhaps picks up some pieces late to maybe make your exotic. Always Dreaming, the Kentucky Derby winner, he is the horse to beat in the Preakness. Lots of graded stakes action on the undercard as well. The Maryland Sprint we'll take a look at right up next. Race number 9 at Pimlico on Saturday kicks off a $1 million guaranteed 50-cent pick 5, and it's a really intriguing sprint race. Let's take a look at the field for the Grade 3 Maryland Sprint. We've got a field of 9, and gentlemen, as you see, big favorites. The 4, AP Indian, the 5, Whitmore. Mike Beer, those two were the horses to beat.
Yeah, they seem like they kind of stand out a little bit in this race. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with both of them, though, because Whitmore is sort of getting his first real test here. He's on a great run right now, but this is the first real test for this horse. And AP Indian second off the layoff. We'll see if he can get back to his excellent 2016 form.
Remember, for expanded stakes previews of all the graded races from Pimlico, Woodbine, and Santa Anita this weekend, head on over to video.drf.com. We cover these fields in depth. Matt, let's talk about AP Indian, definitely one of the top sprinters of 2016. He won his first 6 starts, and he made his seasonal debut last time out with a really good effort. It appears he's back.
I thought he ran just fine down at Keeneland, going 7/8 of a mile. You see him now in the spot shadow. And he pulls away from this field. The problem is Awesome Slew on the far outside comes over the top from the back of the pack. I thought, all things considered, this was a good return effort for AP Indian. And maybe I'm in the minority. I know he had a really, really potent record at 7/8. I think he's a little bit better going shorter. This turn back to 3/4 of a mile I think is going to be very, very good for him. The question now is he as good as Whitmore?
Mike, his shrewd trainer, Arnaud Delacour, had to be very pleased with that Commonwealth performance for a variety of reasons. First, he was fairly wide against a moderate pace. Two, the Commonwealth has come back very, very fast. Limousine Liberal, the third-place finisher, came back to win over the winner of the Commonwealth in a photo finish in the Churchill Downs Stakes. And I have a feeling, a big feeling, that AP Indian was not cranked up for that race.
Yeah, I think that's the way that I would look at it too. Personally, I know he was wide in that race. I don't know. I don't love the fact that he got run down in that race, because the good AP Indian, the AP Indian we saw through most of last year, he never would have got run down in that race. But maybe he just needed it, and if he takes a step forward here, I mean, he's just way the horse to beat.
Mike, you like Whitmore in this spot. This horse has done nothing wrong since being cut back in distance for trainer Juan Moquet, and he's got an explosive late burst of speed.
Yeah, it's time for them to step him up, and I know that he just won a Grade 3 race last time out at Oaklawn, but this is a tougher Grade 3 that he's going to step into on Saturday against a horse, AP Indian, who's won a couple of Grade 1s. And it's time to step this horse up. He's on a great run right now. He is 6 for 6 sprinting in his career, and he can do it in a lot of different ways. He'll sit up close to the pace if he has to. He'll come from off of it like he did here if he has to. He'll go inside. He'll come outside. There's a lot to like about this horse, and this is just the right time for them to find out what they really have.
Matt, our expanded stakes preview not only takes a look at all the horses in this race, but also the Timeform U.S. pace projector. And they're not expecting a fast pace at all. Maybe that works against a horse with the late burst of Whitmore and works to the favor of a long shot, a horse you like in here.
You know, this is just a scenario where Holy Boss, maybe he's not as good as he used to be, and maybe he has entered the stage of his career where he's comparable to Green Grotto, where you absolutely have to have the front and you have to have things your own way. Recently, he hasn't had that go his way. You see Whitmore out there, obviously. The competition in Arkansas, I'm a little bit suspect of, but I think that this horse, Holy Boss, is the speed of the speed. Mike Smith, you have one way to go. You try to clear to the front. If you can hang on, great. If not, maybe he can hang around for a piece, but I do think he is the speed of the speed. Send him out of the front.
Kicking off this 50-cent $1 million guaranteed pick 5, the two favorites would be my A's in any sort of ticket maker play, but I do like sort of an under-the-radar long shot as a stab to win, and that is the number 2 Classy Class going out for trainer Kieran McLaughlin. This horse popped a 100 buyer speed figure most recently at Aqueduct, but as we take a look at that race, he really had the benefit of a short field and an easy lead up front. I've always tried to make Classy Class a good horse, and I think he's had some trips in a couple of races. He can be close to that expected slow pace that the Timeform U.S. pace projector lays out. The question is Classy Class good enough? He's 10-1 on the morning line, and with AP Indian and Whitmore likely to take the lion's share of the money, I'll find out if Classy Class is good enough at double-digit odds. I'll take a shot with Classy Class while using those two favorites as A's in ticket maker plays in the pick 5. Getting back to the Preakness, everybody wants to know who's got the stamina, who's got the bloodlines to last this demanding mile and 3/16 distance. Nicole Russo has some ideas with her pedigree pick.
Hi guys, Nicole Russo coming to you from Pimlico for our Preakness edition of Out of the Gate. A field of 10 has been entered for Saturday's second leg of the Triple Crown. 5 of those have the field exiting the Kentucky Derby, led by Derby winner Always Dreaming. Always Dreaming is one of the horses we've talked about extensively throughout the spring, along with Derby runner-up Lookin' at Lee and Champion Classic Empire, who finished 4th in the Derby with a treble trip. They've all got really solid pedigrees moving forward into the Preakness here. Always Dreaming is by Bodie Meister, who was a very good second in the 2012 Preakness. Lookin' at Lee by 2010 Preakness winner Lookin' at Lucky, who in turn is the son of Smart Strike, who also sired Preakness winner Curlin. And Classic Empire is by Pioneer of the Nile, who not only had Triple Crown winner American Pharaoh, he's the sire of Preakness 3rd place finisher Social Inclusion. So all 3 of those with very strong credentials, including very strong pedigrees. I think the Preakness will go through them. Let's talk about the 5 newcomers to the Triple Crown series. I'm going to take a look here at 2 of them, one that I'm not leaving out of my exotics and one that I'm approaching with some caution. The one I'm definitely going to use and would advise you to use as well is Conquest Momoney, who is coming in off a runner-up effort at the Arkansas Derby. Just a very tough, gritty little horse. He's from the second crop of Uncle Mo, who of course had Derby winner Nyquist in his first crop, so we know Uncle Mo can get a classic horse. On the female side of his page, Conquest Momoney is from the family of Belmont Stakes winner Touch Gold. He's from the family of Brilliant Speed, who was not only 3rd in the Belmont, he was multiple Grade 1 placed going long on turf, so a lot of stamina there. This is also the family of Canadian Triple Crown winner is Vestia, Jockey Club Gold Cup winner Haynesfield, and a bunch of Canadian champions actually. So a lot of bottom on that female side of the page. Conquest Momoney just from a classic family on both sides to back up what he's shown on the racetrack. Now, Cloud Computing is actually the shortest price of the Preakness newcomers at 12 to 1 on the morning line. After winning his debut very impressively, he jumped right into Stakes Company, where he was second in the Gotham, third in the Wood Memorial. This is just his fourth start, and you've got to think he's got a lot of upside to him. Now, he's from the first crop of McLean's Music, who won his only start at 6 furlongs with a 1:14 Beyer speed figure. Just a very impressive horse. His foals have come out running early, as you might expect. Now, McLean's Music, we don't know if he could have gone longer. He's by Distorted Humor, who I tend to think of as more of a middle distance sire, even though he has had a pair of classic winners in Funnyside and Drosselmeyer. Now, Cloud Computing, if you like him, he does get some bottom on the female side of his page. His Damn Quick Temper was stakes placed going 1.25 miles. She's by AP Indian out of the very good handicap mare Halo America. So I am approaching Cloud Computing with some caution, but there are some signs for hope in his pedigree if you do like him. Thanks for tuning into Out of the Gate for the Preakness edition. Make sure you're following our staff on the ground at Pimlico this week on Twitter for up-to-the-minute news and updates.
You asked, we listened. DRF Plus has more flexible subscription options. Use DRF Plus Basic for exclusive news and analysis, including our DRF Live real-time news feed. Or go deeper with DRF Pro and unlock buyers, closer looks, picks, and reports, including the DRF Daily Game Plan. DRF TV viewers get 50% off the plan of your choice. Use code DRFTV50 at checkout. Learn more about the DRF Plus subscription plans at drf.com/plus.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate, presented by the Maryland Jockey Club. We move to the turf for the Grade 2 Dixie Stakes. Carded is race number 12 on the Preakness undercard. Let's take a look at the field for this year's Dixie, and again, for expanded stakes previews, visit video.drf.com. All the graded races from Pimlico, Santa Anita, and Woodbine this weekend. We discuss all of the horses in depth. 3 to 1 on the morning line for the number 4 Projected, Mike Beer. This is a horse new to North American racing, has only started twice, but made quite an impression last time out at Keeneland, taking down a big scalp into Visadero.
This horse has run well in both of his starts over here. The first one down at Gulfstream, trying to close into a really modest pace. I thought he did well that day. Here's a second start at Keeneland. You can see him sort of forcing his way off the inside. He got a really nice trip overall, but it's not like this was a perfect sort of in-out run into the stretch here. He's got to bang his way out from behind horses. He does that gamely, and he'll get pretty desperate here to hold on at the end. But the horse that he's holding off at the end happens to be Divisadero. Came back with a big win on Derby Day.
Divisadero, of course, came back to win the Turf Classic. The third-place finisher Pleven came back to win a stakes race as well. It's Chad again. You know this horse is going to get bet, but he did have a good trip all in all last time out.
He's just the kind of horse that if he wins, I'm not going to be surprised,
Right.
But at a short kind of number with that kind of trip, because like Mike said, really until that little bowling out sort of situation where he split horses, he had a pretty good run of the entire thing. He's a nice horse. I'm not going to knock him, and I don't think he has any real reason to not warrant favoritism, but I don't want him in a short number.
Matt Tripp handicappers were salivating when Black Type ran last time out in the Makers 46 mile. Nothing went right for this horse. You like him in here.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I don't like the Makers 46 as a race, and I think that's the biggest knock about it, just the overall quality of it. But when you take a look at the replay, Black Type had 0 opportunity to run. He's in the spot shadow there. Right now, it's already bad enough. He's in amongst horses, can't find any sort of seam. It's only going to get worse here, though. He's in between horses. He's never allowed to actually go. And the thing that just kind of caught my eye, you see everyone else in an all-out drive. This horse is basically under full hands right now, and he's still only going to lose by 2 lengths. Again, maybe that is sort of an indictment on the entire field. And again, I'm not thrilled with American Patriot winning that race on his wrong lead, but I do think with a better trip, if Black Type has an opportunity to run for Christophe Clement, I think he's got a chance.
The only issue, Mike, with Black Type, and he's done nothing but good work for Christophe Clement, second time off the layoff, lots of things in his favor off that trip, is that with his running style, he often gets into trouble.
He is one of those trip horses. You go back through his PPs and you can watch the replays of one race after another, and he tends to find trouble in his races. On the other hand, he's pretty good. Since they took the blinkers off him, he's really improved, and his best race makes him really tough.
Mike, World Approval earned a Grade 1 victory last year in the United Nations at Monmouth, going 11 furlongs. But you've always liked him at these slightly shorter distances, and he really started off his season the right way last time out.
Yeah, I just think he's a good horse. He obviously had a good year last year. They tried to stretch him out at the end. I sort of understand why they did that, and he acquitted himself pretty well. But I like him going a little bit shorter, and they've started him off going shorter this year, and I think this is a great spot for this horse. I just think in some ways, and Projected obviously has the potential to be really good. This horse just might be the best horse in the race, Dan. This is his seasonal debut off the layoff. And listen, these horses aren't as good as he is. They were never going to be able to beat him. But it's got to be pretty nice for his connections to see him come back and walk his beat like this. I mean, he just crushed this field. A perfect place to start. They step him right up for this race. I think he's in line for a good trip and a good performance on Saturday.
I think that's a very good point. He did not have to work hard at all, and he probably gained needed fitness with that victory at Tampa Bay. He does have that good tactical speed to stalk the #1 security risk, the likely pace setter in this race. I'm going to take a shot with Ring Weekend, the number 10, and you're a horse that's run well at Pimlico in the past. He came off a very long layoff last year in the Dixie and just missed. Last time out, he ran at Santa Anita in the Frankie Kilroe Mile, and to be honest, the Kilroe Mile strikes me the way the Makers 46 strikes both Matt and Mike. I don't really love the horses coming out of it, but of those horses, I prefer Ring Weekend. And we saw him, it took him a long time to get off the rail. Dortmund, the beaten favorite in this race, sort of clogged the outer flow, and Ring Weekend couldn't get out until too late. He was a bit one-paced in the stretch, but he galloped out well after the fact, and I think he needed a break. He had a lot of races without a layoff. He gets the break coming into the Dixie for trainer Graham Motion. The 10 Ring Weekend, again, he likes the course. I'm going to give him one more chance in the Dixie. Again, the Preakness, of course, is the main event this weekend. Craig Milkowski for Timeform US in his Spotlight feature this week is going to discuss the race from a pace standpoint using the Timeform US pace projector, and then we go to Jonathan Kinchin, who has his take on the Preakness. Let's head to those segments right now.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski of Timeform US for Out of the Gate. This week we're going to talk about the Preakness pace projector that's provided by Timeform US. The Preakness drew a field of 10, which is a big field by everyday standards, but compared to the Kentucky Derby 2 weeks ago with 20, where 5 of these also raced, it should be quite a bit easier. The 20 horses of the Kentucky Derby almost always is going to predict a fast pace just because there's so many. But here in the Preakness, the pace projector is showing that the race should favor horses on or near the early lead. And that's because, frankly, there's just not a lot of early speed signed on to the race. The horse that's anticipated to lead early is Conquest Momoney. He's been a versatile sort of horse. 3 of the last 5 times he's raced, he's been right up on the lead or within a half a length of the lead. But he's also come from back in the middle of the pack a couple times to win and run second. The reason he is on the lead is just, as we said, there's not a lot of speed drawn in. He's proven to do it at a high-class race. He was led almost wire-to-wire in the Arkansas Derby before getting run down late. And also that 10 post that he drew is kind of going to force his hand, where he's probably going to have to show some speed if he wants to avoid losing a lot of ground on the first turn. Shown next in the pace projector is Always Dreaming, the obvious, the Kentucky Derby winner and sure to be the heavy race favorite. He's a horse that was a little bit tricky for the Kentucky Derby. He had run in some races that were of lesser competition. He set a slow pace, as you can see by the blue fractions in our graphic. So he was shown back in the Kentucky Derby. What happened since, though, is in the Florida Derby and the Kentucky Derby, when the competition stepped up, he was able to run faster and still go on and finish. You see the good 121 and 123 Timeform US speed figures. He's never been further back than second after the half mile. So this is a horse who will probably be prominent throughout. The third horse shown in the pace projector is Cloud Computing. He's a lightly raced horse who these are the toughest to predict when it comes to the pace projector. The thing with this one, he's only run 3 times, but he has been in the front half of the field every time. He's done it while running quickly. There haven't been any slow pace races in his PP, so probably sitting in the 3rd, 4th spot is about right for him. The horse who could maybe be a little different than what's shown in the pace projector is the Eclipse Award winner as a 2-year-old, Classic Empire. He hasn't shown quite the same level of early speed as he did thus far this year as he did last year. In the BC Juvenile, he ran a 125 time form US speed figure, and he did it while running 130 to the half mile. So this horse showed quite a bit of early speed. This year, it hasn't been quite as much, but he also had some training issues. He had a foot abscess that set him back for a while. And you can see his pace figures have been improving. He started out with a 104, then 109, and last out in the Derby, despite being well back in the pack and having a very tough trip, he was still able to run a 122. So if any horse could be up closer than he's shown in the pace projector, it is probably Classic Empire. The others in the field are all pretty much stone closers. They don't figure to affect the pace. And they're horses who probably need a setup they're not likely to get to be factors. If the pace were to get hot, the 2 most likely beneficiaries would be Gunnavera, who won the Fountain of Youth. He's won from last place a few times in his career, next to last. So when he wins, it's from well back in the pack. And the other would be Looking at Lee, the Derby runner-up. He's a stone cold late runner. He needs a fast pace. Again, he's unlikely to get it, but those are the 2 that we want to keep an eye on down the stretch. That's it for me today for Timeform US. And next up, we have Jonathan with Kinchin's Corner.
Hey everybody, welcome to Kinchin's Corner. We've had a couple of winners the last few weeks, so hopefully you guys have been on board for that and been growing the bankroll, and we can keep it rolling through the spring and summer. But this week, we're going to focus on the Preakness Stakes, the second jewel of the Triple Crown. Really excited about this race. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's pretty straightforward to me. I think it's a pretty simple situation. I think that 2 horses can win, and ultimately I think 2 horses can run second. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of a video time machine back to 2007 to lead you to how I kind of came up with the idea of how I think this race is going to unfold. We'll start with at the break of the 2007 Kentucky Derby, where Curlin broke down from the inside from the 2 position. Gets away from there pretty clean, but about 15 jumps from the wire. He just gets all the horses kind of come over on him. He kind of gets shut off, gets shuffled back, and as a lightly raced horse, it's definitely not ideal. He ends up in the back half of the field, taking a lot of kickback and trying to have a lot of, he comes up with a lot of adversity he's got to overcome. Now, we're going to fast forward a little bit. Make sure you take a mental screenshot of this, okay? He turns for home. They're pulling away. Street Sense gets the best ride ever from Calvin Burrell. He's drawing away, similar to something we'll see a little bit later in another video. And on the outside, you'll notice that Curlin's flashing here. He ends up getting up for 3rd. And then we're off to Pimlico. So now we'll fast forward a couple of weeks to Pimlico. And this is kind of what I see happening here, and we'll get to that a little bit more specifically as we get into the Derby. But as you take a look at the Preakness in 2007, Street Sense gets away, and Curlin, with a much better start today, keeps running at him, and keeps running at him, and keeps running at him, and those 2 begin to kind of pull away from the field, and was one of the best stretch drives ever that Curlin was able to take, and winning the 2007 Preakness. It's very similar to what I think is going to happen here, and I think a lot of people probably already know where I'm going with this foreshadowing-wise, but you're going to take a look at the Kentucky Derby. They break away from the gate here, and Classic Empire gets absolutely annihilated at the start. I think his start was actually worse than Curlin's start. He gets shuffled back, and he has to run from a position that he's never run before. In fact, he took so much kickback in his eye. He had an infection in his eye where they had to try to sort through that. He ends up wide all the way around there on what was many will agree was an inside favoring track. And then when they turn for home, Always Dreaming, looking very similar to Street Sense, is pulling away. And on the far outside, you'll notice, you'll see the mud-covered Oxley Silks and Classic Empire kind of running on late for 4th and not really threatening the winner at all, but definitely overcoming the trouble, overcoming the trip, and running on well there. And I think that's exactly what we're going to see on Saturday. I think that what you'll notice is that Always Dreaming and Classic Empire are going to be bet. There's going to be lots of other buzz horses that people think that they can get in. But for me, it's going to be simple. I'm going to do a weighted exacta box with Classic Empire and with Always Dreaming. I don't know which one of those two horses is going to win, but I know they're both going to run well. So, for instance, you can take a $100 exacta box, exacta, take a $100 bankroll, bet $75 on Classic Empire and Always Dreaming, and then $25 on Always Dreaming and Classic Empire. Or you can flip it the other way if you feel like you have a stronger opinion about Classic Empire. But I'm going to bet an exacta box with those two, but I'm going to weigh it a little bit towards my opinion, which is that Classic Empire should turn the tables on Always Dreaming. And it's going to resemble a lot what we saw 10 years ago.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate, presented by the Maryland Jockey Club. Time for our Best Bets segment. Mike Beard, Naira analyst. It's Preakness Saturday.
Yeah.
You got to go with the Preakness undercard. You're looking for two best bets in a row on the show. Where you headed?
Yeah, let's stick with Pimlico. Though race 11 is the Sir Barton for 3-year-olds. There are a couple of, I think, legit favorites in this race. I have no real problem with the 2 hedge fund or the 9 time to travel. On the other hand, I'm not sure how great either one of them are, and I feel like there's a chance those two get hooked up on the pace together in this race. They're both more speed types. Number 5, No Modo for Graham Motion is my best bet. 12-1 on the morning line. This horse has run well in all 3 of his starts. This is his debut sprinting. Just want to point out those fractions there at the top of the screen. 24-1, 48-4 sprinting, and this horse just steamrolls this field down the outside in the fastest fraction of the race. I like this debut. He came back with another good effort at Keeneland out of this with a really tough trip, and then he won a couple of weeks ago on the Derby undercard, coming through between horses in the slop. First time around 2 turns, he finished strong again. I like the way this horse kicks in the lane, Dan. He's going to have some pace to run out here, and he's a price, and I'm betting.
Matt, you are dodging the Pimlico Day card at Santa Anita with Pee Wee Reese.
You're gonna have to work with me here, okay? This is only a 5-horse field. It's the opener at Santa Anita on Saturday. It's the Crystal Water Stakes. It's a really short field, but you got a big name in there. What a view. Pee Wee Reese is a horse that I don't think he just has a big chance on Saturday. I think going forward, he could be a legitimate miler. His most recent start was his first time going 2 turns on the turf. He's down on the inside, and he's got Kenji Storm, who's a pretty hard-hitting old vet on the outside. He's dead in the water right now. Instead, Pee Wee goes on with it. He goes on and extends at the end. To me, this is just the sign of a horse that wants to beat you ever since Phil D'Amato moved him over the turf. He's 3 for 3. This was the closest and the smallest margin of victory thus far. But you look at the fractions. Again, he's not going to make you a ton of money tomorrow. He may be in the sort of 8-5 range. This is a really talented horse, and I think there are bigger and better things down the road. This may be a best bet for the stable mail. Put him in there, Pee Wee Reese.
Like Mike, I'm going to go with race number 11, the Sir Barton Stakes. Like Mike, I think the 2 favorites are solid, but somewhat vulnerable. I thought Hedge Fund had no excuse in the Illinois Derby. I thought he should have won that race. I think the Time to Travel's last 2 finishes, not very impressive, drifting out substantially in the lane 2 starts back and failing to change leads last time out when well beaten in the Grade 3 Lexington. Where we disagree is with the horse. I'm going with the number 1, Honor the Fleet, going out for Lou Bertrand. He trained Artax all those years ago to win the Breeders' Cup Sprint. This is a very lightly raced horse who's stretching out around 2 turns for the first time, but he's a big, good-bodied sort. As we see from his most recent performance, the fastest race of his career. This is a 1-turn mile in his first start against winners, and he just strides away in the lane to win by almost 8 lengths, and he pops a 90 Buyer's speed figure. I think he's going to work out a really good trip in the Sir Barton. There's a little bit of speed, especially with Hedge Fund breaking to his inside. I think Steve Hamilton on Honor the Flight's going to just sit in the early portion of this race, save valuable ground going into the first turn, and we'll find out how good Honor the Fleet is as he takes on stakes competition for the first time. The 1 Honor the Fleet is 5-1 on the morning line in the Sir Barton. We thank the Maryland Jockey Club for sponsoring Out of the Gate this week. We thank you for watching. Best of luck this week when your horses break out of the gate.